Hello everyone, welcome back. Sorry for the delay on the commentary, but we've got a long odd session ahead of us anyway, so that shouldn't matter at all. 1 hour 26 minutes because of the Pirelli tyre test. The drivers will be given set run plans, so they're all equal, but obviously they'll be doing their own driving. Currently, we do have Alex Albon still in the garage, and I don't know if their car will be coming out for the FP2 session. They're going to still work hard on doing so, and if they can, because of this longer session, they might actually be able to get some laps in. We see Lando Norris come back in, we see Zhou Guanyu come back in, so does Fernando Alonso, so does Lewis Hamilton, and of course Charles Leclerc. So we got all of the full-time drivers back on the grid ready for this second session, and yeah, let's see how this one goes. Leclerc should be quick as always. Norris is going to get his first running in, other than, well, so I should say, instead of Verstappen, who's already had an hour in the car, although they had some issues. Of course, I don't quite know what the situation was with those issues in FP1, but I'm sure we'll find out fairly soon on what that is. Currently, Piastri has set the fastest time of the session already. I'm just going to quickly double check the results from the FP1 session. So we did get George Russell, I thought so, by 0.3 of a second, then 0.7 back was Yuki Tsunoda. In the middle of them was Carlos Sainz. So it was all a bit of a mix in FP1. It was difficult to say who was really fastest. Of course, we had a few FP1 junior drivers and external drivers on the grid to mix that all up. But also seeing Mercedes up top, we know that they were pretty quick in qualifying pace for the past few races. But they've just not really had it in race pace. Now, George Russell didn't, and still doesn't have the upgraded floor package, and although Lewis Hamilton wasn't happy with it last weekend, still decided to keep it. We've got a yellow with, that would be Pierre Gasly on turn 3. Just double check and see what's going on there, as they're going very slowly. I don't know if it will be an issue. They continue, we won't get another yellow. And we'll see, one of the Ferraris going very quick. That's Carlos Sainz looking to improve. We've just had Lando Norris, purple middle sector, but messing up the final sector. Season P7, Alonso up to P5, and then Carlos Sainz across the line, and it is going to be a P1. Lovely stuff right there from Carlos.
Definitely lovely. Fast lap on the test tires for Pirelli. But on the difference, you just can see he was now doing his fast lap. He has to do what the other cars look like. They're doing more the long runs to see if the tires also last a bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they're testing the new C6 tyre, which is going to be interesting for sure. It'll be incredibly soft. That reminds me a bit of 2018. We did see that yellow flag just a moment ago, just to confirm it was Pierre Gasly going deep into the first corner and then driving over the grass very elegantly, but obviously it isn't going to help. They then did go over a curb, so they must be having some pretty bad issues right there. Hopefully they're all good and they can get a quick lap time in. Right now P11 ahead of their teammate. But yeah, still not with the best of floors, I'm going to assume now.
Oh, Verstappen still with a weird noise in the engine, like he had in the first free practice. It's going to be interesting how that develops for the whole weekend. If Red Bull can fix that issue, or if he will still have minor problems with his engine and maybe his gearbox, even for the race.
Red Bull's still confident that he can stay out on track, however, so they don't seem to be worried. But yeah, I'll be honest, for the race, you don't want to be slower than you need to be, so I reckon he's probably going to get a 5 place. Would he get a 10 place grid penalty? I think he's at least going to get a 5 place, if not 10. So yeah, it's going to be a shame, but it's going to definitely make it closer for the championship unless there's a safety car, which we did see 2 of. I think Heischler pointed out last season. So it is a circuit that can mix things up. In the past, it's been kind of a bit of a not a boring race, but sometimes things haven't happened too much. But then sometimes a lot has happened. And quali is usually a pretty good watch as well, so it's going to be really awesome to watch tomorrow. But right now we've got a few cars going pretty quick, even though they are all on the test tyres, and it's hard for us to actually see what tyre type they're running, so we're just going to have to assume that George Russell is on a softer compound as they're going to improve, and they're going to go up to P6. I don't think they would have been impeded there. I don't know what was being said from Verstappen, Tom. I don't know if there was any more updates on this situation.
I couldn't hear it probably myself, unfortunately.
No worries at all. Okay, so Verstappen going slowly in the final sector. I don't know if he's just attempting to start a lap at all, or if they're making their way back into the pit lane. They're going into the pit lane, so they're not happy, even though the team said they can stay out. Maybe that was a mention to come into the pit lane. And yeah, they're going to see if they can spot anything with that. Sergio Perez also into the pit lane, both Red Bulls doing what they need to do. Currently, Carlos Sainz still holds on to that top time with 3 purple sectors as well. 7 tenths ahead of Liam Lawson. Then we've got Piastri, Tsunoda and Hamilton finishing that top 5. Tsunoda and Lawson getting in those quick times quite early on. I say quick though, they are incredibly far away from Sainz. Now we just double check and see. I assume it's going to be an audio thing, so they must be having some sort of whining issues. And nope, the brakes don't work at all. So more problems with the kind of integration of the entire package of the Red Bull. Since Zandvoort, I remember it was really bad with understeer and stuff like that. I know there were more complaints previously, but yeah, Max Verstappen just not happy with the car. It's going to make things interesting, but that being said, he still won the sprint in Austin, so I'm going to be honest, I don't think he's going to be losing this championship, but it definitely does look like it's going to be closer than we probably imagined at this stage.
Definitely, the gap should be enough for him, even with some problems. Lando Norris needs, I think, 11 points more each race, which will probably be pretty happy because either Norris wins and gets the fast lap every race, and Max just only finishes 3rd all the time, which will be pretty hard with the Ferraris and maybe the Mercedes up at the top. And if Norris doesn't win, it just gets more and more impossible for him, as Verstappen also can have a bad race to still score decent points in comparison to him.
I may be incorrect, but I think if Verstappen finishes 5th or lower every single race, and Leclerc wins every race, I think with maybe fastest lap or not, I'm not entirely sure, then Norris gets, it's either a P3, a P, or 2 P3s and a P2, or something. Anyway, in theory, Leclerc could still win this championship. I mean, it could even go down to Carlos Sainz, I think, to possibly win the championship. But that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen lap time-wise to improve up to the top for George Russell, as there's another crash for the British driver, and that is going to be our 2nd crash this weekend, and we're only in the opening stages of FP2. The Pirelli tyre test is going to be momentarily stopped. Turn 9, the S section again, and it's another big hit into the barrier. That's going to be a lot of repair work for that car and the barrier. We're not going to be going anywhere for a fair few minutes. I don't know what to say. I mean, they're not on the upgraded package, at least, as George Russell, so it's not a second load of updates damaged, but 2 crashes in a row, Tom. That's really costly for Mercedes and their performance this weekend. They weren't entirely confident. This is definitely going to make things incredibly difficult.
Yeah, definitely. It's looking like a rather big crash. Compared to last time, I think. The car looks like he at least lost one tire, probably two or maybe three. So that's gonna be a lot of time to put in. They probably have it for the next session, but it's gonna be a night shift for the whole crew. And also because with now going to the end of the season, it's gonna be close with the budget cap
Mm.
to the end, and crashes like that just don't help because it's just money you have to spend on spare parts you usually wouldn't spend. Yeah, and also what's really interesting is like you mentioned, second time, the second race, and again a really high speed left turn, which he lost the car. Okay,
Mm.
now it was right going into the left, but still it's a quite fast turn. Like maybe they're missing general grip on the rear or don't know what, why, but they just keep losing it in the high speed parts.
Yeah, yeah, and both cars as well. So I guess it's not really a driver thing. It's going to be a car situation that they've got to deal with. He's okay. He gets out the car, but the medical car has arrived. It's not going to be nice crashing in the way they've done. It's a side impact as well. It looks like, or was it a side impact? I don't know, but the car's sideways anyway, and those can be pretty devastating if it goes horribly wrong. But luckily they're okay, and we don't need to worry for now. But yeah, Mercedes maybe going to have to look at going back to even older spec parts, as Tom said. Going later into the season, you really look at like a tight budget cap, and you have to make sure that you're incredibly careful. I don't know if it's possible that drivers would end up going all the way to being able to not drive at all because they have no front wing or something like that. But I think we'll probably be seeing George Russell on a lower spec
Uh,
for the rest. They've just ridden over the curb, so is that right? That it's not actually a loss of a rear. I think they've just ridden over the curb.
that's that's just missed by the driver. With going so far over the curb, the car just bottoms out and sends him just flying through the turn. No chance for the driver to control the car afterwards.
Mm.
So just a slightly missed entry and a completely crashed side of a pretty expensive car.
Yeah, it's a bit of a clumsy one and a bit of an expensive one for sure. That's really disappointing, but it is what it is. And now Lewis Hamilton is going to get this session without a teammate, so yeah, Mercedes aren't going to be happy. Uh, they've had one crash. It wasn't Antonelli this time, but it was, of course, George Russell. And that is the right side of their car quite damaged, and maybe a bit of their floor as well on that curb. I mean, it made some sparks. I don't know if it would have been enough to really have a big issue. But yeah, that is a bit of momentum they've carried into that barrier. I don't know how long it will take to get rebuilt. Of course, we still need to see not only the rebuild of the barrier, but the car be moved out the way. So once that car is moved out the way, then only can they start sorting out the barrier. But George Russell heads to the medical centre and will be checked up after that one. Alrighty. 1 minute 12. I don't know if are we going to be able to get in for the hour session. I think we can, probably. 12 minutes, is that going to be enough for them to repair the barrier? I don't know. Maybe we're only going to get 45 minutes. Obviously, we did get a few in. I can't remember exactly what it was that we crashed at. I think, was it 17, 18 minutes? So it's been about 5 minutes, more or less, under red flag conditions. I may be completely wrong. I have to double check that and see how far off I am. But yeah,
Um,
everybody currently standby.
I mean, it should have been a tech pro barrier when I started right, which are meant to be replaced quite quickly. It just looked like it's a small part, just 3 segments. So if they can get the car out quite quickly, I would think they should have a chance to repair it also quite quickly, with like 15 to 20 minutes, and now a lot of time is already passed of that, so we should be going on track around the hour mark.
Yeah, hopefully we will. That would be good to see everyone back out so we can get those times on the board, of course. Now we get this red flag moment, we're going to quickly head over to looking at what happened in FP1. Obviously, with a big crash of Albon and Behrman. Behrman obviously was driving Leclerc's car. Leclerc gets into the session absolutely fine. But Alex Albon, unfortunately, not in this session. The beauty for them is that the red flag will mean that no one else can do any running, so they'll kind of be on a level playing field a little bit more, slightly, very slightly, to the other cars. But obviously, any running is good running, but that's not going to happen. So it is what it is. And then also in P1 we had Antonelli P12, Pato P13, Dragovic P18, and Schwartzman in P19. That's how the session went there. Once again, to repeat, we do have all the full-time drivers in the session now. Now, Red Bull, they've got Max Verstappen out of the car. Are they looking at doing any changes? It looks like they are doing some work to the car, whatever they can.
Maybe just checking the brakes, as he complained earlier, because it didn't look like they're doing much, but they seem a bit troubled. There are a lot of discussing, thinking what's wrong with the car, and it's like nobody has got a real idea.
No, just talking to the engineers, talking to Max's race engineer to try and kind of translate their communications between one another so they can try and figure out what's going on. But they're not touching the car at all, really. They're just kind of letting it cool down, I guess, with the fans on it. But Max isn't in the car. I mean, they're going to have probably a good 10 minutes, and because they'll have like an hour session, at least with that 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you might as well just sit out of the car, to be honest. Sergio Perez finds otherwise. They are going to try and be in the zone as they relax in the car. I wonder how relaxing it actually is. We've got a 40-degree track temperature, 22 degrees air temperature. They might have a cooling fan, so it probably isn't too bad right now if you're just sat in the stationary car. But still, 22 degrees in a big old suit. It can't be that nice. Now, what is going on there? It's the Ferrari. They're doing some sort of wiring up with the car for Charles Leclerc. Whether that be repair, I don't know. But yeah, they're doing what they can. And Mercedes, of course, without a car in one of their garages, not going to be happy at all. I'm sure George Russell is not looking forward to going back to the pit lane to meet up with the team. They've got a long old day ahead of them tomorrow, especially the mechanics as well. That's going to be very, very tough for them to deal with. Now, Tom, I'm going to ask you now, not for final predictions, but whilst we have a little bit of time, who do you reckon's going to win and get pole? The top three, what do you think?
For pole, I say the biggest chance has Leclerc, then Norris, and Verstappen. Just because in terms of current pace of the driver and how the cars tended to go on the last races, with Ferrari pointing towards the top position, while Red Bull was struggling a bit. And for the race, I give you two. I'm once the top 3 I wish for, and one's the top 3 I think it's gonna be. For the ones I wish, P1 Norris, P2 Leclerc, P3 Checo Perez.
Fair enough.
For him having a lovely race at his home Grand Prix after all the problems he had this season. And for realistically, I say Norris wins, Verstappen second, and Piastri third.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's an interesting one. No Ferrari in what you expect.
It's the Ferrari. They've got an interesting strategy. Always, it's been better in the last few races, but it's just a bit scary every time with Ferrari and all the plants are just calling through the radio, like you say. We think you can do plan A, but we're going for plan B, and Leclerc just saying, yeah, I'd prefer B and C. So you just don't know what you get with the strategies from Ferrari.
No, that's for sure. Now, if we see some good performance, do you think Ferrari may even have a look at the constructors? They're 48 behind in the championship. And I believe if they can continue on good form, they might even end up with maybe more wins than McLaren. I don't know how many they got. Is it 3 with Norris and 1 with Piastri, or is it 2 of Norris and 1 with Piastri? Whereas
I
Ferrari have
think
got a few.
I think it's Norris 3, Piastri 1, and Ferrari also should be at like 3 or 4 race wins this season.
Yeah, I think they're on
And
course.
with the current form of the drivers, also mentally, I think Ferrari actually does have a decent chance. 8 points behind Red Bull, they're probably catching them if Perez unfortunately performs as he did. But I don't hope it's coming so for him. And the 48 points, I mean, having a good race. The, from the other team having a car don't finish because of a technical issue or something like that, and you just quickly even in terms of points, and then it just gets really really close to the end of the season, and we could see maybe one, hopefully two really interesting championships maybe gonna decide on the last race of the season.
Yeah, it would be a hell of a race to watch in the final race of the season. Maybe even Sky would give it free to Channel 4 and then everybody would be able to watch. Anyway, I can dream. Looking at the championship, whilst we've still got this red flag, more on the constructors as well, but just a little bit further down the order. We have got Haas and Racing Bulls 38 and 36 points. They're very, very close, so that's going to be an interesting one. Haas seem to have the better momentum, but with not the best race or the best luck in Kota, I believe, in the Grand Prix. It did make it a little bit more difficult. Of course, Lawson scoring points, but at the same time, Haas did score some decent points in the sprint race. Then we've got Williams versus Alpine, 17 and 13 points. So those are very close. Tom, out of the 2 battles, of course, Haas versus Racing Bull, and then Williams versus Alpine, who do you think are going to be the ones coming out on top? It's got to be surely Haas out of Racing Bulls, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Not to be personal, but just as a team, I would say they've got the better pairing of drivers, who are just pushing themselves to the top and just got more of his experience in. Like Tsunoda does some rookie mistakes still and gets really angry sometimes, and Lawson has just 3 or 4 races of experience, at least in the F1 car. So that's gonna be difficult for him. And on the other side, you've got Hülkenberg, who is really, really long in the F1 series, having really great results, but just wasn't in the top team. So I think he probably would have had a chance at the podium. In his career, Magnussen is showing a great pace if he doesn't crash anybody out.
Mm.
And also the car itself looks like it's more on side of the Haas team, as they did a lot of steps further in terms of development through the season, while I feel like the RBs was just a bit stuck.
Yeah.
And with the fight between Williams and Alpine, I think they got with Colapinto and Albon just a phenomenal driver pairing who get more out of the car than they sometimes should deserve. With that I mean they can get a P8, P9 instead of a P12, P13. And with this value, you just got a decent chance at scoring points each race. And on the other hand, you've got the Alpines who are really disappointing sometimes, but sometimes still getting somewhat comfortably into Q3, so you don't really know what you get from them. So that's going to be really interesting, but I think Williams should stay in front.
It's a bit of a shame to see a factory team, of course, Alpine, not being further up on the grid, but Williams just doing a great job. They didn't have the best car at the start of the season, but they managed to get it pretty well together in the second half, which is great to see. It makes them a lot more competitive and, yeah, scoring some decent points, but also get some great action on the track as well. Colapinto gave us a hell of a moment, of course, at the start of the Singapore Grand Prix. So that was pretty awesome. But yeah, it's a shame also for Colapinto, of course, not really being secured for the future just yet. Williams do want to keep hold of him. But I'll quickly go to I'll go to Colapinto a little bit later, just quickly looking at the situation. 59 minutes on the clock. Still not got a green flag, but they are making good progress on that wall. I think in a matter of minutes we should be good to once again get going. Just waiting for a couple minutes. I think it's going to be about 3-4 minutes maybe, just to double check on what's going on. But hopefully we can get some more updates at some point soon to be able to make a bit of a better judgment and see who can be the top team out of the, of course, Pirelli testing drivers. But yeah, we'll see. Russell, of course, out of this session early on. P9 at the moment with a 19.041, and that will be their only time. And I am going to probably assume they will end the session in last place. Unfortunately, just quickly looking at FP1, the slowest car was Oliver Behrman, 21.258. Robert Schwartzman did stay in the session, a 19.988 for them. I think they maybe had a bit of an incident. They've got a 5-place grid penalty to their name despite not being registered to race. But yeah, actually, Russell's time might not see him last, although everybody will start to bring up the pace a little bit more. That being said, of course, if you've got a Pirelli test to go, then it's going to make it possibly a bit more difficult. I'm going to go back on myself once again because Carlos Sainz has already beaten the top time from the FP1 session. George Russell getting a 17.998. Of course, Carlos Sainz a 17.809. Whereas all the other cars are not quite making it that quick. But we have only had a few minutes of running since our red flag, and hopefully we can get going once again in a matter of minutes. As the data won't be given to any teams, we of course did see we would see Alex Albon and Williams have a bit of an advantage because no one else runs in this session. I know I mentioned that earlier, but might as well mention it once again, as we do have a long way to wait in this session. Now, I do apologise, I just have a few difficulties. I will go back. I'll be back in a second. I'm just going to have to leave Tom with this one. I will be back in a few minutes.
While we were waiting for the restart or the lights to go green and see some cars on the track again. We've got some interviews with the reserve drivers who participate in FP1. Currently hearing Drugovic, who's just fascinated by all the work. And on the other part of the screen, we just get a lot of impressions of the Grand Prix itself, off track, in the stands, and there's actually quite a lot to happen, and it seems like all the fans are in great mood, even though the cars aren't racing or driving on track for last like 20 minutes, which is nice to see. To have still such a huge amount of fans who don't get upset just because there isn't any car on track.
That's true. That is very true. You've got to have the patience. You've got to have the patience, and this is part of Formula One, unfortunately. I don't know what the situation is on Max Verstappen. Hopefully, we can find out as we progress through the event. It looks like the barrier is somewhat fixed, and hopefully, we can get confirmation on when the session will restart. Should be in a few minutes' time. As the Mexican fans are very, very happy to be at the race circuit. We do get confirmation. 16:36 local time. So in about a minute's time, we'll get to see cars once again out on track. It says track clear, DRS enabled, but not actually going out on track just yet. Although maybe people will be able to get to the end of the pit lane. It looks like the Aston Martins are on their way out, and we will also see no, not Piastri, Norris and possibly Piastri are on their way very shortly as well. Now, everyone's lining up at the end of the pit lane, which is interesting. They've not got the confirmation, but they want to try and make the most of everything they can. 54 minutes on the clock, almost like a standard session. Of course, we had a few minutes before, so it is in theory a little bit longer. The only cars that haven't been out on track so far is Leclerc, and that would be Alex Albon. Of course it would be. So that means almost everyone has set some form of lap, of course. That being said, Verstappen not actually setting laps, but has been out a little bit to just try and get the car running and, see what the problems are with the session. But we are once again out on track. Alonso, Magnussen, Stroll, and then that would be, I believe, Norris. Yes, it is Norris and Colapinto following shortly. So everyone will be able to give us a good old show, and hopefully we don't get any more red flags. Now, looking at last year's times, I will update you on what we saw. That being said, I've completely lost all of that, so you have to give me a minute to find the actual results of the race. Hopefully I can find that pretty quickly. I can. FP2, looking at the times that we got at the end of that session, it was an 18.686. So you can see how, though the cars progressed in the FP3 session, we saw a 17.887. So we've already beaten the FP3 session from last year. Qualifying, it was a 17.1 for Charles Leclerc in the end. So actually, we're not that far away from beating the qualifying times from last year, just showing how quick the cars have got within the kind of 12-month period.
Yeah, the cars definitely got faster, but we have to keep in mind they're using the test tires for Pirelli still, which had a necessary quali lap, and I think many teams tried to actually do some kind of qualifying simulation, and also the set should be softer, if I'm correct. So that's also a reason why we've now seen faster times compared to last season, and also so as let's say close to the quality times from last season, just because of all the difference in testing they're doing currently than they would do in the FP2 session.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly right. And I think 2025 these tires are being useful, if I'm correct in saying. I don't think these are 26 tires. I think they are 25 tires, so we're going to be able to see this level of grip potentially. Whether it will be used or not, I don't know, or if teams are just kind of being forced onto this tire. So far, it seems to be working quite nicely. The only one it wasn't working for was George Russell, as he protested. But oh well, that's done. Now we do see people start to cross the line to get proper laps in, as I believe we will be able to find out any improvements. We've got actually Carlos Sainz going faster in the first sector yet again of anyone, so they are pushing quite a lot in this session right now. Norris up to P5, and both Astons have set improvement lap times. Magnussen for almost 4.5 tenths behind Carlos Sainz, but still setting an improvement lap. We also see Zhou go up to P10, and we will get the two Ferraris very shortly. Bottas putting it up to P3, but still 7 tenths behind the top time of Carlos Sainz. Leclerc only P10 in the end, but Carlos Sainz, what's it going to be for their improvement run? It will be a 17.699. They didn't quite get the middle sector right. They're about 2 tenths off the McLaren car, but they did manage to get the first and last sector pretty good, although Piastri has beaten that last sector, but still not able to compete in that first sector, which just saw them lose out on so much lap time. Sonoda in the meantime has also improved, so very close to the back of Piastri, 1/1000th of a second away from the McLaren car, of course, but still 2 tenths away almost from Carlos Sainz, who still managed to get that pretty decent first and final sector together, which sees them at the top. We've got Sergio Perez up to P5 at the home Grand Prix. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of a cheer for that one, although it is FP2, so don't get too excited. We see Ocon up to P11. Everyone's mixing it now as they start to push a little bit harder, and we get a proper view of what's going on, as just having an idea of what it's like. Lando Norris having a big moment in that final sector, so that's going to explain why they haven't been able to go any higher than their current P10.
Also, Piastri got a huge moment into the S section of his lap, so that's probably also a reason why he's 2 tenths behind Sainz. Both of the oversteer moments looked really close to losing the car, but congrats to the drivers who could keep the car on track, which is a bit different to some other Brits on the grid.
Lovely stuff. He just has to point out the nationality. Awesome. Alright, well, Hulkenberg crashed twice in the Zandvoort, and I remember that, so that was a pretty diabolical result from him, so there you go. We get Max Verstappen out on track, and hopefully he can show a bit of a representative lap time for their current form and the car's form. They are improving 28.0 in that first sector, so still not quite to the 0.9s as I think Piastri was. I think it was Piastri that got that pretty quick first sector, unless I'm completely wrong. I'm probably completely wrong. I will double check that in a moment's time, but Verstappen comes through the second sector now, and we'll see what they can do. 33.5, not terrible. Obviously it's going to be, I say not terrible, it's actually pretty horrendous. So never mind, just completely ignore me in that one, but they can run the final few corners and we will get to see what they can do. But also Leclerc is looking like they're improving as well.
Yeah, in the meantime, Verstappen got called into the box again, as it seems like they didn't fix the problem, even though they're working on it, and it seems like it's more troubling now as he went immediately into the pit. So it's quite interesting how they usually are quite fast in finding the problem and then also quick in solving the problem. But now it looks like they don't even have any idea what the problem is.
Yeah, it's it's a strange one. Hopefully they can get a bit of an understanding, but considering the struggles that they've had, I think one of the biggest problems that Red Bull have been having recently is not being able to understand what the actual problem was. We've got a yellow of Hamilton going very slowly. I don't know if that is just them slowing down, but it was at a very similar corner to their teammate, so hopefully we can understand what's going on there. It was only for a moment, luckily, but they continue and they look absolutely fine on the timing, of course. But yeah, Mercedes definitely don't want any more scares. I think it was just a yellow flag by the track delta. I don't think it was anything major. But Verstappen out of the car, and they're going to start working on it now. So once again, yep, going to be frustrating for Verstappen to have to take all the kit back off, and then wait and wait and wait, and they're not going to be getting too much running at all. So Verstappen's not only going to be potentially getting grid penalties after this race, but also potentially not getting much running at all, and is going to be really quite far behind everyone else. We could see maybe a repeat of something like Belgium this season, where he just didn't seem to really have the ability to get further up the order. Also, Baku for Verstappen just didn't look good at all. So we could see a repeat of something like that in this later part of the season. So yeah, hopefully that's not the case, and we can see a bit more of a competitive Red Bull. But at this stage, I don't think it's looking too good. Now, Hamilton is setting another lap after their woes on the previous. We've got Perez going into the pit lane. I believe Lawson, Ocon, Gasly out on track. Bottas a little bit further behind. What will Hamilton be doing, or are they making their way into the pit lane? They continue and they go up to P6. So looking like they went for a bit of a push lap there. An 18.2, still 5, almost 6 tenths away from Carlos Sainz, who has set an absolutely awesome lap early on. As you said, Tom, of course, it could be that they went on a qualifying run, so it would make a lot of sense. We're on a softer tyre as well, but yeah, we'll see. Verstappen really not happy, I don't know. What was going on with the car there?
That was a replay of him on a lap before he was called in. And you could actually hear that the engine sound was a bit off than we're used to from the Red Bull car. So that's probably what they want to figure out. What is what is making these problems with the engine?
Yep, so having to remove the front wing so they can get to the pedal box, which will be, I guess, looking at what could be a possible braking issue. Maybe they would decide to look at the floor, as we saw last weekend. They were looking at what is called the bib tray. So that will maybe be something that they're sorting, but I don't think so. That'd be a bit of a strange thing to look at making changes to, if the issues that they're complaining about are the issues that they are struggling with. But yeah, anyway, Carlos Sainz is once again back out on circuit. Are they going to be improving? We will find out. I say that is Leclerc. I've completely messed that one up, so I'm going to just be quiet there. Sorry. Alright. Leclerc currently P4, 5 tenths behind their teammate. I mean, Tom, Ferrari looking incredibly strong. Again, 42 minutes on the clock for FP2, and it's a completely different tyre. But, you know, I would you say it's correct in thinking that it is their race to lose? I know you didn't actually predict that a Ferrari would maybe win. You thought it would be a bit different, but surely it's Ferrari's races to lose now.
I would say, pace-wise, with the car and the talent they've got as a driver for the drivers, It's definitely disappointing if you don't get both cars on the podium, I would assume. Um, so yeah, it's probably theirs to lose, as they also seem to be really quick, again. Um, but with this close of a fight for the top positions, with three, maybe four teams fighting for minimum the podium, it's easy to get at least one driver not where you wanted it, but you don't have to um, be negative about it and just see what you can do if everything works for your team and your car,
Hmm.
because that's the point you want to develop further.
Yeah, definitely. And anything you can develop in this season will help you with momentum for the next season. Just mentioning, of course, 3 or 4 teams fighting. That fourth team being probably Mercedes. In my opinion, I think they are behind Red Bull. Really on outright performance. I think they're going to be there in case of mistakes, as we saw, of course, in Austria, where George Russell was able to pick up the victory from just being close by, where the crash happened between, of course, Verstappen and Norris. But yeah, top 2 teams right now are Ferrari and McLaren, so we're kind of in a bit of a flash of the past at this stage of the season, which is pretty nostalgic. And then you go and see the Williams plonk on that new livery. It's yeah, it's looks like we're going back in time right now. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. We've got Norris, who is on a outlap, getting ready to start a lap. I believe that is the case. But yeah, lots more cars now back out once again. 39 minutes on the clock. Leclerc is slowing down, so they've set their quickish lap times, and they are nice and close to their teammate, only 2 tenths away this time.
Hmm. What I'm wondering the most is how long they have to use these test tires in the session.
I think it's the
Because I
entire time. I think so. What they're doing is they've been given a fixed run plan from Pirelli, so they have to follow that so everybody's equal. But obviously they can do whatever they want when they go on that tire. So I think they have to put on different tires for different stages of the session. But they can do whatever simulation, whether it'll be a quali or a race simulation or any other kind of testing. So I think that's the situation. We will probably see them all go to the end on this test tire.
uh, because I read there exceptions for the drivers who didn't participate in FP1. But maybe that's just in terms of runs they have to do that they are excluded from it, so they've got their own program they could run, but probably also have to use these tires for the whole session as the others.
Yeah, that's true. That would make a lot of sense actually. So I didn't realise that. So well spotted. But yeah, so that would be for, of course, Alonso, Hamilton, Leclerc, and Zhou. And I've completely forgotten if there were any more. I think that was it. Was that it? Have I?
Norris.
Norris. There you go. I thought I missed someone. Missed a pretty big person on the grid for this championship right now, but oh well. It doesn't matter. Right, now, lots of people out on track right now. In the pit lane, we've got Russell, obviously. We've got Verstappen, we've got Perez, we've got Bottas, we've got Hamilton, we've got Piastri, and we do have, of course, obviously as well, Alex Albon. But right now, other than that, everyone out currently doing laps, maybe a few on in laps. We've got Magnussen crossing the line, we've got Alonso crossing the line. No one actually setting an improvement lap, however, so they are just getting a bit more of a distance run, it looks like. So this is kind of the less spectacular part of the session, but it's all important stuff ready for for tomorrow. Well, not actually for tomorrow, for Sunday's race, where we should see everything, of course, come alive. That's where the money is made and the magic happens, where you score the points for sure as well. Now, scoring points, Tom, I want to ask you, what's your opinion on, I know it was already mentioned last weekend, but what is your opinion on removing the fastest lap point? Is that something that you are happy with, or are you a bit disappointed that the fastest lap point for the race is gone?
I actually have to say that I don't really care about it. As probably compared to others. Like it was nice that the fastest car on track, in terms of one lap, got a point, but it was just if a team or a driver was out of points and it just didn't want to have a certain driver in the top 10 to get an extra point because maybe they were close in the championship or so on, or they would just call him in at the last or penultimate lap and then just send him on one try in the end and just sneaking the extra point, which they just didn't get because I won the top 10. So I think it was a solid idea, lacked a bit in terms of how they did it, but I'm not really mad that they removed it.
Do you think maybe it should have been the fastest lap point goes to the fastest car within the top 10? Would that make a little bit more sense?
Probably, because then you wouldn't have this scenario I just explained with the current at the back just getting the point off the other cars, which is really fair, I would say. So the actual 10 fastest cars on track theoretically have a chance to just get an extra point if you really were the fastest at least for one lap.
Yeah.
So I think that would have been a great idea.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a shame that they didn't do that. I mean, I guess it would have been a little bit more complicated and it would have been quite difficult to understand live in real time, but it would make a lot more sense, and I think that's actually quite a nice thought. So, fair enough. Maybe you need to be part of the FIA making those decisions. Or would have been F1 actually? I don't know if it would have been the FIA making that decision. Anyway, doesn't matter. We don't want to talk about politics. We want to talk about racing, although that's on Sunday, so we've got a long way until that happens. Currently, Carlos Sainz, Piastri, Tsunoda, Leclerc, Magnussen, and setting lap time-wise, of course you've got Russell, but you've got Zhou, Gasly and Alonso at the back of the pack. That is the Red Bull in absolute bits. They've taken the floor off, so I said that it would be weird to go into the front part of the car and mess around with what they were messing around with in Kota, but it looks like maybe they have done so, and they have taken the front floor. The front floor off? They've taken the floor off the car. So yeah, they're really not happy with anything on that car at the moment. Now, whether they'll be able to get in for any running this session, I think it would be very slim. So it is just going to be about FP3, a bit of a replica from what we saw in Austin. Of course, Verstappen will basically get one run one practice session really. I mean, they did do some running, of course, in FP1, as lots of cars did, but it will make them lose out a little bit. So they'll get a bit more practice time than they did, of course, in Austin, so a little bit more preparation, but we'll see. Looks like is that Perez faster down the straights compared to one of the McLarens, so that is interesting. Obviously, it doesn't really make a difference if the other car is so much quicker in all the corners. But what I'm thinking is, if the Red Bulls are able to be ahead of the McLarens at the early stage of the races, as we usually expect, the McLarens will come back on performance later on into the session. But it's no good if you're not quick in a straight line, because making that move in a straight line, if the other car is quicker, you might not have such an advantage. That being said, that start-finish straight is so long. Although the DRS straight has been shortened this year, it's still going to be a long or straight for cars to be able to make overtakes. So I think maybe if the McLarens end up in a similar situation that they have done so many times this season, they might have a bit of an easier time getting past any of the Red Bulls for, of course, position. But we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a very interesting one. I'm sure we can have a very, very good race. It's pretty, although it's a chicane, Tom, it's a pretty high speed chicane because you carry so much speed into the corner that first kind of like the turn one is quite difficult. And for overtaking, it can be good, but it also can be somewhat risky, right?
Yeah, definitely, because it isn't as wide as you would expect it to be. Especially turn 2 to turn 3 gets quite narrow really fast, especially with the exit out of turn 3. So it's really difficult to get two cars side by side through it, which will have to, which need really high composure, not to quite get into it. So if I was a driver, and I see I wouldn't make it completely on the straight, and would have to make a move into that section, I probably would want to stick behind, follow as close as possible, and then try to overtake the car ahead on the second gear off straight, directly following it, and going in the bit more heavier braking zone. As I think that's a more realistic approach, as you can squeeze you in more. Also got a good chance at the outside with the narrow right turns following it.
Yeah, so Tom giving away all of his plans for the race in a few weeks' time in LSI. But it does have a lot. It does make a lot of sense because you basically get most of the second and third sector to effectively try and break away. There is a mini DRS straight from turn 11 to turn 12. Whether you can really make an overtake. If you do want to make an overtake at that corner, it's going to be either the race start or the race end. Maybe the pit stop section, but you're going to have to use all your battery to do so. So you kind of don't have to worry about that too much. And then you've got another technical part of the section of the circuit, I should say, to get through before you get to that start-finish straight. And by that time, you hope that you've managed to create a bit of a gap so the car behind doesn't try and re-overtake you. Anyway, 29 minutes on the clock. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're getting to the final stages of this session. Not even the halfway mark of this session. It's the last third. Hopefully we don't get any more red flags, because that wouldn't be ideal. We do get a bit of a situation between Lando Norris and that is going to be an Aston Martin. I don't know whether this is impeding or if there isn't. Well, you can't really impede in practice, can you? They've attempted to go for an overtaking manoeuvre as they're on their run. So they've got the job done, but not with a little bit of trouble, of course. They have locked up that front tyre. And they've sent it back on the inside. So they've got a bit of racing here. Is that Lance Stroll?
Alonso and Norris.
It is Alonso. Okay, so we've got Alonso doing some racing. This is going to give them some good old practice. Lando Norris getting some practice on the brakes for his race. Not going, well, did they go out of track limits? I don't know. They don't want to do that again. They're just exploring what they can do, ready for Sunday when they have to go wheel to wheel with Max Verstappen. They did get ahead, of course, of Alonso eventually, but it was a lot closer than it maybe needed to be, especially in a practice session.
Yeah, and also stuff like that is great data for Pirelli, because usually in the practice sessions you won't have these fights into the corners, because you want just to have a completely clean stint here driving, no trouble with any other cars, so you don't have any crash potential. And so this is really nice for them, because they see how the car, how the grip from the tires maybe varies. If the car is closer to it, or if maybe a flat spot like the tire of Norris could have got right there, that would change the performance of the tire.
Yeah, for sure. That's great technical knowledge, of course, for the team, but also for the Pirelli tyres. I am very interested in how they are really very tentative on the turn 1 curve, but then turn 2 they absolutely mash it, completely cut it. Turn 3 they cut it pretty good as well. So they're not afraid to go over the curbs around this circuit. Of course, George Russell was not afraid at all until he was afraid. But yeah, those first few corners seem to be attacked quite nicely. It's the S section that you've got to be careful with, as the cars actually don't fully mount the red and white section, which is very wise to do so. But yeah, the inside corners, when they're going the slow speed sections, they are seemingly cutting them quite hard.
Yeah, definitely, especially with the long straights, you would expect having a really low setup in that point. So it's really interesting to see that they're going quite hard on the rather high curbs, because there is a risk of bumping on them with the really low floor they put. But it seems like no team had a problem with it yet. Hopefully it stays so, and hopefully the thickness of the floor isn't getting too thin, as we have seen it with, I think, Leclerc and Hamilton once already. So it's gonna be really interesting if they maybe change it a bit for the race situation, maybe getting a bit off that curb also for tire preservation
Yeah.
and so on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I assume they wouldn't be riding it in the race for preservation. Maybe they would, especially at the race start, because they are still riding these curves despite setting kind of race pace lap times. So yeah, we'll see how that goes, of course, on Sunday. But now I've completely forgotten what I was gonna say, as it was what you saying, race pace. You just said before race pace. I've forgotten what you said. I've completely forgotten it. Plank, there you go. So the floor, wear it down too much. I'm not sure if that makes a difference in the practice sessions, because it's still an illegal car. If you are too low on the plank, would you actually get disqualified from a practice session? I don't know.
I don't think you would disqualified from a practice session.
Would there be a penalty?
But I think there could be a penalty, like a 5-place grid penalty. I don't know how it's going to be the regulation. Maybe just the hefty fine for the team, which probably will be using cap of the budget cap they've got. So that would also be a quite huge penalty, but I actually have no idea how they handle it in the practice sessions. Like qualifying and races, quite obvious, but practice sessions, good question.
Yeah, I will have a quick look, and if I can't see anything right now, then I will try and research that ready for tomorrow, so we can kind of confirm that. Teams also can't appeal against practice session penalties. That's an interesting one. So that's pretty unfortunate if you get a penalty in a practice session. I don't think it just says end of the race, so I will have to double check that at a later point, so I can make sure I be up to date myself, ready for tomorrow. But right now we have got 22 minutes on the clock, and we are really actually getting to the closing stages of the session. Will we see anybody doing some qualifying times towards the end? I don't quite know. Would we even see Alex Albon out as we actually get to see the situation of the car? I'm going to have to say it's probably going to be a no. Unfortunately, they're giving it their best shot. The benefit of pushing and going as quick as they can at this stage in the day, of course, is that they may be able to get a full night's sleep.
Yeah, definitely could be helpful, especially compared to Mercedes and Red Bull, who might have more time or less time in the night for sleep with some troubles with the car. So yeah, that would be more awake or more fit for tomorrow, the practice session or the qualifying and the race, for some incidences which quite easily can happen, to fix it maybe a bit faster, because their brain is just working that tiny bit more through the 1 or 2 hours sleep they've got advantage compared to the other two crews I just mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. Sleep will be a big factor in Formula One for performance. I mean, I know a lot of teams, of course, can run on pretty much no sleep in multiple occasions when they are forced to do so. But hopefully, the Williams crew are good to go for tomorrow. Now, Sergio Perez is into the pit lane, currently P8. Looking at the grid, who is out of place. I say out of place, who is got the quick lap time in early in the session. It's Sonoda and Magnussen and Bottas as well. So they've managed to get their way up the order quite nicely. I also have a question. Did we get an update on whether George Russell's car is back in the pit lane? I assume it's probably not.
I mean, it's been 48 minutes, or even
Can
more
they
than 40
only
minutes
bring
since.
it back to the pit lane once the session is over, maybe, because they can't just cut across the circuit?
I mean, they've got streets in between the in the circuit to get
Underneath,
the
yeah.
vehicles quite fast.
Mhm.
So I think that might have been the case that the car's already in the pit lane, ready for work. But I also think it could be if the streets a bit too small and just for the smaller motorcycles for the drivers, that the car would just be back in the pit lane in 25, 30 minutes or so when the session is done.
Yeah, I think that might be how it has to go. So Mercedes, they'll definitely be able to assess the damage on that car. I assume they're probably going to send what the Red Bull and Ferrari, McLaren maybe, and maybe some other teams are going to send 1 or 2 members down to have a look at that Mercedes, because why not? If you can get any information on the other teams, then go for it. So they're definitely probably going to be going to have a look and making some notes of what they can on the bottom of that car, if it's on a crane at all. That would have probably been much earlier in the session that they were doing that. And that is the disadvantage of having a big crash, because your car gets moved, lifted away, out of your control. You can't do anything about it. The other teams can. They can go and have a look from any angle they want and make some good notes. Of course, most of the time you can see the top of the car and the outside of the car, but you can't see the underneath unless you've had a big crash. It will be slightly skewed if it's damaged, but it is still going to be an idea of what that Mercedes is doing underneath. The disadvantage is that it's not the updated floor, but it is still a Mercedes floor that other teams wouldn't have got to see in other scenarios, of course.
Yeah, I would assume that the old floor wouldn't differ too much because of the limited testing times all the teams got. And I don't think it would be such a radical change in the underfloor as they did with the side pods multiple times in this era, with going for the zero side pods and huge side pods, and now getting close to the zero side pod again. You just don't have as much possibilities with the underfloor. Maybe smaller changes for the wind flow, but not these major changes.
Yeah, for sure. I think the side pods of the Formula One cars over the last, what would it be, 2, 3 years now, have changed quite a lot. Obviously, many teams going for different styles. We saw some kind of traditional side pods at the start of the season, but with massive, great big gullies that they had, of course. But then also Mercedes, as you said, they were on that zero side pod. Everything's kind of changed. We saw Red Bull at the start of this season almost go for a little bit of a zero side pod. I'm going to be honest, when I saw the Red Bull at the start of the season, I thought, well, 23 was dominant. Now we're going to get 24 with absolutely no questions asked. Red Bull going to win every single race, as they had 3 intakes on, of course, the airbox. So they had the top bit and then they had 2 intakes on either side. They'd have gone to different places on the car, I assume, but it just looked like an absolute weapon. And it was for the first few races. It was absolutely incredible. But then it just slowly saw the other cars catch up to the Red Bull. And I don't think the Red Bull slowed down. I mean, of course it didn't slow down. It's just that they had to push the limit more, and that's what we're seeing. The car's been pushed to the edge, and now it is at the edge. It's just... yeah, not performing as it should be. It's a bit harder to deal with. So yeah, we'll see how that one goes for Sunday, if they can get on top of any of the issues they've had, and if Sergio Perez can get a bit of performance in the car. Currently still sitting P8 and sitting in the pit lane at the moment. With 15 minutes on the clock, I don't know if they'll come back out. Now, Oscar Piastri out on circuit. Both McLarens actually. Carlos Sainz still holding that top time, not being contested. And Piastri's time isn't going to be a quali run. 6 lap old tyres, or 6 lap old stint. Yes, yeah, so, sorry, 6 lap old tyres right now they are using. And they were scrubbed. So they've been out already on this set of tyres, and they're not going to be going too much faster at all. So it looks like with 15 minutes on the clock, anything can happen, but I don't know if we're going to be getting any kind of qualifying runs at all. I think that's probably going to be left for tomorrow at this stage. But now I've said that, it's all going to change and everyone's going to whip out their qualifying simulations very, very soon. Piastri 0.09 seconds faster in some sort of scenario, looking at the data they say. Yeah, the McLarens are looking pretty close, despite Norris being 7 tenths behind, about 6 tenths, 5.5 tenths more or less behind their teammate.
The graphic was showing the difference in throttle and braking performance of both drivers in the last 2 turns, I think. And if you gain 0.09 of a second on the exit of the last turns and then the entry of the really long straight, that could make a huge difference in terms of the whole gap you would create for the long DRS straight. So with that better exit, he might stay ahead in his scenario, while Norris would maybe lose it, even though there would have been the same gap in front of the last 2 turns, just because of the maybe better exit of Piastri, because he was a bit faster on throttle and just had a better speed out of the turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's fair to say. I do wonder, actually, with McLaren obviously getting their pace together throughout the season, maybe they fixed the issues that Daniel Ricciardo was once complaining about, of course, when they weren't able to really show the pace. So Lando Norris also complained about that a little bit, but still was able to do with the car. I think Carlos Sainz also did complain about that, but was, again, still able to drive the car. Whether they will be plagued by that as the car gets towards its peak performance, and maybe that's why it's not as quick as the Ferrari, whereas the Ferrari have just managed to develop their car all round and keep up a good momentum. I don't know. I'm probably absolutely chatting, but it's something to say, isn't it? So it could be something useful and something actually real. But we'll find out as we get to 2025, I think, as all the cars get to their limits, because they're not going to be fully developed. We're not going to be seeing the cars develop too much beyond 2025, as they will all start to reach their peak and all the teams focus on 2026. When we get to January 1st, that's when everyone will be looking at designing those 2026 cars. So I think it's January 1st. Anyway, doesn't matter. Yeah, 2026 cars are going to be interesting for sure. The mix is going to be very, very different to what we can see right now. But 2025, we've had some pretty competitive qualifying sessions in recent times. I think it's going to be absolutely awesome. I know a lot of people like to see the racing, and the racing's going to be closer than ever before, but I think the qualifying sessions next season are going to be absolutely awesome.
Definitely, with the cars, all the teams developing that cars for this end of the season and probably the first quarter or maybe third of the beginning of the next season, and then just focusing on the 2026 regulations, we'll probably see a steady car with maybe 1 or 2 upgrades after race 7-8 for the teams. So yeah, it's probably gonna stay really close as it is now, which will be really fun, and it's going to be also really interesting what the slower teams are going to do, like Alpine, also Williams, Aston Martin, obviously Sauber, and also maybe Racing Bulls and Haas, if they're more focused on developing their car for next season more than the top teams would do, or if they just leave it with the car from the end of this season and just fully focus on the 26 regulations, and then think we are going full into it and maybe get the chance to perform directly and get the best we can get out of the first season of the new regulations.
Yeah, it's something that they got to balance with. Of course, it's not going to be easy to figure out. Ultimately, if you do completely disband or disregard the 2025 season, you do lose out on a lot of money as a constructor. So you've got to try and balance it out a little bit. Some people will be sacrificing that. I think maybe a team like Sauber could really benefit. Maybe from that. I don't know if they would just want to focus fully on 2026 and just completely scrap it for 25. But maybe they could, you know. Maybe they'll just run like Haas did in 2021. They just ran 20 car and didn't really do a massive amount to it. Maybe they'll do that. But they might be able to get a bit of a jump and start scoring some points. And that, I think, you know, battling with other cars will be quite a big thing for data, especially for Audi when they come in 26. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that one goes. As there's Hamilton sending it over the curbs as they start a lap. Are they going to be going quick? I'm going to double check their tyre. 14 lap old scrub tyres. I don't think we're going to see an improvement. I hate to say it. Now,
It's just there's something on that Mercedes. There, at the rear, there's something of plastic or something else who is stuck to it. Probably drove over it, and now it's in the rear suspensions. But I think that shouldn't be there.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something to look at. That's why obviously we're probably getting the view of the back of that Mercedes. So even though one of them's crashed and one of them hasn't, they've got some sort of damage to the back of that car, to the floor of that car. Did it just fly off, or is it still there? I think it's still there. Hopefully we can get a bit of a better angle in a
Yeah, it's
moment's
there.
time. It is still there. Yeah, you can see the sparks flying, so that is probably going to be slowing the car down a little bit. Whether they just go straight back into the pit lane, not even do a full stop. Nope, they're going to continue for the rest of the session, and that, whatever it is going to take a bit of a battering.
Yeah, probably it's not affecting the aerodynamics for the cars. It looks like it's just being attached to the complete rear, where there's nearly no grip anymore. Building. So it's probably fine in terms of that regard.
There's a bit of plastic or something on the back of that car. Or is it wire? I don't know. It's a strange one to pick up. Maybe the mechanics didn't quite sort out what they were doing, or is that intentional? Would it be intentional? Would it be a bit of tape, like the classic times that they used to do aerodynamic testing? They would put little bits of string or tape on the back of the car and then see how it moved. Maybe they've gone really old school to look at what the weight is on that car. I very much doubt it, but I guess they can just pretend that that's the case to save themselves from embarrassment. Anyway, whoa, not 9 minutes, 5 minutes on the clock, and Carlos Sainz still tops that time, and we're not probably going to see any improvements. That being said, we've just seen Lando Norris, also Alonso and Zhou whip out the medium tyre. So medium tyres, fresh medium tyres as well. That's going to be interesting. Could we see some improvements? Or is this harder compound, which would be the C4 tyre, compared to the C6 and 5 that they've been probably running so far? That's going to be interesting, whether at the late stages it's going to be faster or not. Of course, the circuit gets rubbered in, which will definitely help, but it is going to start to cool down temperature-wise. That being said, the air hasn't actually really cooled down. I think the track temperature definitely has cooled down as the sun gets much, much lower. But yeah, we might not actually see any improvements, but at least we get to see some fresh tyre running.
Yeah, and maybe I don't know if it's allowed after this session, but maybe they're just taking the real set of tires for this weekend to do some practice starts after that.
Yeah.
But like I said, I don't know if it's practice starts after this session. But if it is, that's probably the reason they went out on the tires for this weekend.
It would make sense. I do believe they can do it. I don't see why they wouldn't. Maybe they don't decide to do it for a reason. It's possible. I guess it could make sense because they want to stop running on track as soon as possible in the second session. So maybe we'd see some more practice starts for FP3, but it'll be a moment of time, a matter of time, I should say. 3 minutes, just over. We'll be able to find out what's going on. But Valtteri Bottas goes into the pit lane, and they will not be doing, or very unlikely be doing, practice starts unless they can get a few tyres on that car, of course. Ideally all 4 would be great. Norris is improving in that first sector, and they do improve on the times. A 117.9, P5, still behind their teammate, but not as far away this time, pretty close.
Yeah, and the thing we don't know is how much fuel they used now, how much fuel they used with the test tires, and which which exact compound of the test tires they used, and also Mexico, because of the low grip, is just the track where the pace just gets really better after doing multiple laps and with these this driving after the red flags, getting the bit of marbles on track who help the grip a bit. Just shows how you could improve even with maybe a set of harder tires compared to the others they used.
Yeah, makes sense. It would be good information to bring, of course, for later on. Now we see Yuki Tsunoda is out of the car. Lawson is in the pit lane. We saw Magnussen finishing the session. As we get to the final few seconds of the session, just a quick update. Alex Albon, of course, crashing in FP1, does not get any times. Verstappen having problems throughout the session in FP2, whether that would be braking or engine. They had a couple of issues. They ended up taking the floor off the car, and that has pretty much been the last that we've seen from the Red Bull garage, at least that I can recall. So Verstappen not able to set any lap times. They had a couple of laps running. They did 4 laps, I can confirm, and that was it on the test tyres as well. Russell, of course, crashing out in the early parts of this session as well, within the first, was it 15-20 minutes, so they didn't get much at all in this race. They got 3 laps, I actually say 4 laps, to their name on the timing sheets until it went all wrong in the S's. But now we've got all the, we've not all the cars, we've got a few cars out on track, so maybe we're not actually going to get any practice starts, but we are getting, of course, some interesting running. I do apologise for the noise in the background. I'll quickly do that and we'll be good to go. Anyway, Carlos Sainz leads the way. I don't think we're going to get an improvement from Norris again on 3-lap-old medium tyres, nor from Alonso or Zhou or Hamilton, but we could see an improvement here from Leclerc. As actually Alonso does go faster, still 4.5 tenths away, however, from the current pole time, but that would, in theory, put them in P6, so they would be able to put a decent time in right there. Hamilton isn't currently improving, but they're getting a little bit of data, 1.48 seconds away, or 1.148 seconds away. So, yeah, they won't be improving. We've just got Norris going fastest in that final sector, but finishes the session and will not be improving any further up the order. We will get Hamilton crossing the line. Perez will be crossing the line. So they did set some more laps in the end. I wasn't expecting that, to be honest. 32 laps for their name. 34 laps for Carlos Sainz, 35 laps for Bottas. Just looking at the most laps completed was actually 36 for Zhou, who will complete their session as well. They have completed their session as well. And then we'll get to find out if they are really going to do those practice starts or not. But that is free practice 2 finished with the Pirelli tyre test. At the end, they're able to jump onto that medium tyre. Of course, that is Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton, who wasn't running earlier, and it is Zhou. So earlier on, Tom, you were right. The other cars can hop out onto a set of medium tyre, current tyre, that they can run for this weekend to get a little bit of help towards their race. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Is that braking issues there for, that would be Leclerc. But anyway, that's the session done. Perez went into the pit lane. Leclerc's going into the pit lane, I believe. And I don't think we are going to get any practice sessions after all. No, Leclerc is going to be doing a practice start. So there we go. That's a second reason to why they've gone out on that medium tyre potentially. But that has been practice done. Tom, I'm going to ask you one more time, who's going to get pole, not the top 3, who's going to get pole and who's going to win the race?
As I don't remember what I said earlier,
if you've changed your mind, it's absolutely fine.
I still think, if I said it, Leclerc pole position, and then Norris race win.
Okay, I'm going to say Norris pole position and Leclerc race win. There you go. I've completely flipped you there. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. It's been a pleasure, and we will see you tomorrow for FP3 and qualifying. I was about to time travel right there. again, thank you very much to Tom as well. It's been a pleasure, and we will see you tomorrow.